a lot. There was a lot of concern. There was a lot of doubt. We certainly understood why people were so concerned. It was something we had never done before. But throughout September, October, into November, we proved that our schools could be safe. The previous approach doesn't apply anymore. It's a new approach now, where we're doing much more testing. We're requiring the consent forms. And we now know also the situation room, which was only an idea when we started, that's been an extraordinarily powerful tool. So with all those pieces coming together, we're convinced we can keep schools safe and do it in a sustainable manner. So this is a whole new approach now. Go ahead, Rima.
Yeah, I guess just to follow up on that. So to be clear, will it work in the way that it's been working with the school by school closure? So if, for example, in your weekly testing, if you have a number of people who test positive, then would that trigger like a classroom closure or a building closure? Like how would that work at this point?
The way the Situation Room has been working up to now, that will continue. And there'll always be an investigation. If they find something that requires temporary closure, there's always an investigation to determine the larger ramifications. And then acting accordingly on what the Situation Room and our test and trace team finds. That's been tremendously effective. We're going to stick with that. Go ahead.
Next is Sydney from Gothamist.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for taking my question. I want to ask about the testing mandates, the weekly testing mandates. Could you detail how much more testing that would actually be compared to what you all are doing now? And does this have enough locations and supplies to carry out that testing? And how will those locations and supplies be added to meet the new mandate?
Yeah, this is part of what we have really had to focus on in the last week or so, is perfecting this approach. A lot of conversations over the last few days, over this weekend, to make sure that everything was lined up. The answer is yes. Part of what we found is because we've been expanding testing capacity constantly in New York City, that we now had a lot more we could utilize in schools. Again, we're going from a monthly requirement to a weekly requirement. But we're also going to do it to begin in many fewer schools because we are not yet ready to move forward with middle or high school. So the answer is yes. We have the capacity and the logistical reach to do weekly testing in every one of the schools that will be open. And we think that's going to make a huge difference in terms of helping us assure everyone that we can keep them safe and keep the school community moving forward. Go ahead.
Okay, and then my other question is also on testing. Will all the students who return the week of December 7th be tested before returning? And then will the weekly testing be all the students or a certain percentage? Could you detail that as well?
The weekly testing will be modeled on the approach that has been used on the monthly basis up to now. So it'll be 20% of the kids in the school. That will be done on a weekly basis. There will not be pre-testing. It will be done every week that school is in session. For a school in the orange zone, we'll follow state rules, and whatever additional measures we have to follow as a result, we will.
Next is Steve from WCBS Radio.
You say Steve?
Steve,
are you there?
Steve, are you there?
Steve? I don't hear Steve.
Okay, Steve, we'll come back to you.
Let's get back to Steve.
We're going to go to Jen from WNBC next.
Hey, Mr. Mayor. I'm speaking with you from here at 30 Rock, where the Christmas tree is up and it's going to be lit this week. So I'm hoping you could give us some information about how...
Wait a minute, we lost you, Jen. Jen,
are you there? Okay, we're going to come back.
We're going to come back to Jen. Okay, at least we know our topic. Okay. Who's next? One of those days.
We're going to try Steve again. This is Steve from WCBS Radio.
Hey, is this working now?
There you go, Steve. How you doing?
Good. I hope you had an all right Thanksgiving, given the circumstances.
Definitely. How about you, Steve?
Yeah, it was all right. A lot of video calls, a lot of phone calls. Did the best we could.
Best.
First, I wanted to ask about any more chances for parents to opt in. Obviously, the last opt-in period was in the context of numbers rising. We're getting close to 3%, so it seemed like the overarching kind of feeling was, what's the point right now if schools are just around the corner from closing? So for parents who see this new plan and see some amount of confidence in this new plan, would there be any opportunity for them to get back in on this?
It's a great question, Steve. First, it is important to note that even with the backdrop you talked about, over 30,000 parents decided they did want to opt in during that period, and we're going to honor that, of course. I think the simple answer is let's get this new approach going. Let's work our way up through it and get the health situation addressed, particularly through the vaccine, which could be coming as early as December. And obviously will take some months to play out, but we need to see what's going to be happening with the vaccine. When the health situation clearly improves, that is obviously the right time to do another opt-in, because then we're going to be having a whole different set of circumstances where we'll be able to accommodate more kids. But a lot has to be worked out between now and then. Go ahead, Steve.
Sure. So another question kind of related to that old 3% threshold. I know back when previous plans were announced, you had organized labor partners sitting next to you there from UFT, CSA. I wanted to know how big of a role they played in this new plan. And, obviously they may not be as satisfied as they were before because there's not that hard threshold that they had liked.
We've worked very closely with both those unions and DC 37 and the Teamsters who represent school safety, the custodial unions, everyone throughout. And I think one of the things that's been very clear is folks wanted school to keep moving forward and be open so long as it could be done safely. It's been a lot of consultation. One of the crucial things we heard from our union partners was more testing and required consent forms or medical exemptions. That's been crucial to this plan. So, I think as per usual, people are going to be watching carefully and raising whatever concerns they have, but there's been a lot of good dialogue about what it would take to make this work. And a lot of focus on the Situation Room. I think the success of the Situation Room, and I want to do a shout out here to Commissioner Melanie LaRocca, the Buildings Department, who's led the way with a great team at the Situation Room. One of the things our labor partners have really focused on is that has been a big, really good X factor in this equation, and one of the things that gives them faith that we can keep things safe.
We're going to go back to Jen again. Jen from WNBC.
Thank you. Apologies for the audio issues here. In any case, what I was saying, Mr. Mayor, was if you could please give us a sense of how the city's going to control crowds around the tree, and will that include any street closures here around 30 Rock? Thanks.
Thank you, Jen. Important question. First, we've been working with the state on the right way to approach this, and we have agreed on a ticketing plan. Details will be announced later on today or tomorrow. And the idea is we're going to really limit the number of people by using a ticketing approach. Obviously, we'll have substantial presence out there from NYPD and other agencies to keep people safe. We expect some efforts to make sure there's ample space like we did in previous years where we closed off some lanes of traffic. But again, remember, we want to make really clear to people not to come out in large numbers and to be really smart about distancing. So we're going to adjust those plans to achieve that goal.
We have time for two more.
Wait, do you have a follow-up, Jen?
Sorry.
Yeah, just one quick follow-up. So there will be street closures, but it sounds like you're encouraging people, not to come out and see the tree in large numbers and to wear masks, obviously, and distance from others if they're here.
Jen, 100%. Look, let's take a parallel of the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade, which came off very successfully. The message I put out, Macy's put out, is this is not a spectator event like it's been in the past, and we all need to stay safe and we need to avoid crowds, and people really honored that. I'd say the same thing here. If you get a ticket, great, go see it. There'll obviously be distancing, people will be wearing masks. If you're walking by the area, great, you'll see it. But what we do not want and can't have is large crowds of people trying to get close It's just not safe. It's not like, I don't need to tell anyone, but I'm going to say it again, it's just not like holidays we've gone through before. Let's get through 2020. Let's turn the page. In 2021, we can all get back there to celebrate the tree the right way. But this year is less is more.
We do have time for two more now. First, we're going to go to Katie from the Wall Street Journal.
Hey, happy Sunday, Mayor de Blasio and everybody. My first question is about the capacity of teachers for more in-person education. I know there were so many teachers who got remote accommodations through the calendar year. So if you and the Chancellor want to discuss the teaching, staffing, and what you will plan if you need to make changes.
Thank you, Katie. I think the important point here is as we move to 5-day-a-week instruction, it actually will simplify things in the schools. And I think teachers and certainly both of the unions, UFT and CSA, have been excited by this prospect. It's going to allow things to be simpler and more manageable at the school level. I'll have the Chancellor speak to it because he's been a teacher, he's been a principal, he's been everything in the school systems. So go ahead and talk about that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Katie, it's a really good question, and part of the timeline that the mayor had talked about in terms of some will be ready to go right on December 7th, some schools will need a little bit more time. That's part of the calculus involved with reprogramming schools. So in some cases where you've had one teacher and 3 students, now there's an opportunity for that school to reprogram and maybe have 7 or 8 students, which is still medically advisable, in that classroom. And then it frees up another teacher to perhaps take more students and create another classroom based on how many parents and students have chosen in-person learning.